History. First we have to understand what is history. The etymology of the word history. Where it comes from. Hister, Historia and Historia. This word, it means wise man or learned man. The word Historia now comes, it includes the process of inquiry. These two words were Greek. Now Historia. In the 14th century, the word Hister or Historia enters French and it comes to Historia. And what does it mean? It means tell or a story. Story or tell. So the story or tell, it can be fictional, it can be real. So here it comes French now. In the 14th of century. So the etymology of word comes from Hister, it means wise man or learned man. Historia, which means the process of inquiry, when the inquiry was interested into the any kind of objects that happened. Then Historia. It is a French term that meant a story or tell, which can be actual, which can be even fictional. Now, history. Who is considered to be the father of history and why? We see in the Greek, one marvel work was Historica. Who wrote it? It was written by Herodotus. Who was rightly called the father of history. And what does this masterpiece concerns with? Historica was nothing but it was the study of the Greco-Persian war that happened in the known world. The Herodotus wrote it, penned it down, and it came to be known as a book called Historica or the Histories. So Herodotus is called the father of history. Now, when we have ascertained that what does the etymology of history and who is the father of history, we should understand what is history and why is history. So for the question of what is history, we have certain masterpiece definitions. First definitions, that is, it says history is nothing but fables agreed upon. What does fables agreed upon means? It is nothing agreed upon. Fables mean any baseless story. And who was the gentleman who gave this definition to history? History is nothing but a baseless stories we have agreed upon. This gentleman was called Napoleon Bonaparte. He gave history this definition. Now, another definition what can be of history is continuous progress of human civilization. Continuous progress of human civilization. The continuous progress of human civilization is called history. Now third, we can be very unemotional and say what history means. So we have the term for history in Hindi or Sanskrit, Itihas. And what does this mean? It means nothing but something that has happened. Something that happened. So we have two extreme views. History is nothing but fables agreed upon by the gentleman Napoleon Bonaparte, who said it is a baseless stories that people have agreed upon. It's called history. Now we have some progressive definition. The continuous progress of human civilization is called history. Now we have some kind of actually factual definition, itihas, which means something that happened. So what we can very much comfortably say that history incorporates the essence of all three things. So basically history is also some kind of fables that came up into the studies, continuous progress of civilization, and something that has happened which were attributed no virtue, which were attributed no sins. So this is the accumulation of history. We can very well say definition of history. Now, how can we divide history? How can we study history? So, history can be divided into three parts: prehistory, proto-history, and history itself. And what are the differences between prehistory, proto-history, and history? Prehistory is something of which no written evidence has been found. So, what can be the example? The Pleistocene. Pleistocene, the rock ages in basically the early Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic, later Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Chalcolithic, Neolithic, all are called pre-lithic because we don't have any kind of written evidences of this. So we cannot understand what exactly they meant. So they are considered under the prehistory conditions. Proto-history, it means that a written evidence has been found, but we have not been able to decipher it. What is the biggest example? The Harappans. We have large number of seals, we have large number of pictorial representation, we have large number of whatever you say pictures that has been depicted on the seals, that has been depicted on the dashboards, that has been depicted on many statues and everything. But we have until now not been able to decipher it. So these are under the consideration of proto-history. And what is history? Everything that we now understand. A history of which the written evidences have been found, which has been deciphered. So we considered it under history. It can be ancient, modern, medieval. So now we come to history. History, or particularly ancient history. What can be the part of ancient history of India? It starts with the Vedic era, and it comes from 115,200 1000 BC era, 1000 BC era to 600 BC era. This is called later Vedic. Now what comes next? That is the Janpads. In India, the biggest example, Janpad. It comes in the age of Lord Buddha, in the age of Jainas, Janpad. What comes next? Next comes the Mauryans. The Mauryans, the biggest history creators in India, the Mauryans. What comes next? Comes next the period of 300 BC to 200 AD. And what was this phase called? Why we specifically study this phase, 300 BC to 200 AD? This was the period of Indian mercantilism. Okay. When the trade, culture, everything flourished. We were issuing large number of coins, we were issuing large denomination of coins, everything. Now comes what? Gupta. And then post-Gupta or later Gupta. These are the concentrations of the ancient history part. So, if we have come to know what is history, what is the definition of history, and how can we understand history, dividing it into many parts, then what are the sources of history? How we come to write history, how we come to understand history, and how we understand history as it is, as we now know. So what are the sources of history? How can history be ascertained? The most benevolent example is archaeological evidences. You cannot deny a fact that is represented by the mirror. So if something exists, it tells you about something. It tells you about the age, it tells you about the uses. So archaeological evidences. What can come inside it? The monuments. You cannot deny the fact that can be seen. Coins, inscriptions, and others. And in others, what can come? The statues, utensils, etc. The sources of history. Archaeological. First is archaeological. What comes next? We have books. And how can we classify books? They are the reports of the time, and how can we classify? Written evidences. Written evidences. What can be? It can be of two kinds. That can be secular and that can be religious. Secular and second, religious. Secular, that does not concern with the religion and it is a factual document, statements, and religious, which concerns with the metaphysics and all that, that comes into religious. And what next? The foreign accounts. India had been very fortunate to have the foreign visitors and they were very kind enough to leave some descriptions of what happened into those days. So these are the things that are the sources of the history. Now we now understand what history is, what are the basic definitions, what are the types and how we consider history in it. Now why history? My question in the beginning of the class was why history? Why? And this is the big question. Why? Because history, if we understand whatever situation that existed, what were the conditions and how people reacted to it and what the results came out. If we consider it basically, if we consider it without any preoccupations and if we can analyze it better way, so we can understand what the possible outcomes can be. So that is why we study history and that is the reason history is there. Thank you.